Session 16 of the Law of One, January 31, 1981. Ra, I am Ra. I greet you in the love and the light of the infinite Creator. We communicate now. Questioner, I would like to ask, considering the free will distortion of the Law of One, how can the Guardians quarantine the Earth? Is this quarantined within free will? Ra, I am Ra. The Guardians guard the free will distortion of the mind/body/spirit complexes of third density on this planetary sphere. The events which required activation of quarantine were interfering with the free will distortion of mind/body/spirit complexes. Questioner, I may be wrong, but it seems to me that it would be the free will of, say, the Orion Group, to interfere. How is this balanced with the information which you just gave? Ra, I am Ra. The balancing is from dimension to dimension. The attempts of the so-called Crusaders to interfere with free will are acceptable upon the dimension of their understanding. However, the mind/body/spirit complexes of this dimension you call third form a dimension of free will which is not able to, shall we say, recognize in full, the distortions towards manipulation. Thus, in order to balance the dimensional variances in vibration, a quarantine, this being a balancing situation whereby the free will of the Orion Group is not stopped but given a challenge. Meanwhile, the third group is not hindered from free choice. Questioner, could these windows that occur to let the Orion Group come through once in a while have anything to do with this free will balancing? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner, could you tell me how that works? Ra, I am Ra. The closest analogy would be a random number generator within certain limits. Questioner, what is the source of this random number generator? Is it created by the Guardians to balance their guarding? Or is it a source other than the Guardians? Ra, I am Ra. All sources are one. However, we understand your query. The window phenomenon is another self-phenomenon from the Guardians. It operates from the dimensions beyond space/time in what you may call the area of intelligent energy. Like your cycles, such balancing, such rhythms are as a clock striking. In the case of the windows, no entities have the clock. Therefore, it seems random. It is not random in the dimension which produces this balance. That is why we stated the analogy was within certain limits. Questioner, then this window balancing prevents the Guardians from reducing their positive polarization by totally eliminating the Orion contact through shielding. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is partially correct. In effect, the balancing allows an equal amount of positive and negative influx. This balanced by the mind/body/spirit distortions of the social complex. Thus in your particular planetary sphere, less negative, as you would call it, information or stimulus is necessary than positive due to the somewhat negative orientation of your social complex distortion. Questioner, in this way, total free will is balanced so that individuals may have an equal opportunity to choose service to others or service to self. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner, this is a profound revelation, I believe, in the law of free will. Thank you. This is a minor question further to make an example of this principle, but if the Confederation landed on Earth, they would be taken as gods, breaking the law of free will and thus reducing their polarization of service to all. I assume that the same thing would happen if the Orion Group landed. How would this affect their polarization of service to self if they were able to land and became known as gods? Ra, I am Ra. In the event of mass landing of the Orion Group, the effect of polarization would be strongly toward an increase in the service to self, precisely the opposite of the former opportunity which you mentioned. Questioner, if the Orion Group was able to land, would this increase their polarization? What I am trying to get at is it better for them to work behind the scenes to get recruits, shall we say, from our planet, the person from our planet going strictly on his own using free will, or is it just as good for the Orion group to land on our planet and demonstrate remarkable powers and get people like that? Ra, I am Ra. This first instance is, in the long run, shall we put it, more salubrious for the Orion group in that it does not infringe upon the law of one by landing and, thus, does its work through those of this planet. In the second circumstance, a mass landing would create a loss of polarization due to the infringement upon the free will of the planet. However, it would be a gamble. If the planet were then conquered and became part of the empire, the free will would then be re-established. This is restrained in action due to the desire of the Orion group to progress towards the one creator. This desire to progress inhibits the group from breaking the law of confusion. Questioner: You mentioned the word empire in relation to the Orion group. I have thought for some time that the movie Star Wars was somehow an allegory for what is actually happening. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct in the same way that a simple children's story is an allegory for physical/philosophical/social complex distortion/understanding. Questioner: Is there a harvest of entities oriented toward service to self like there is a harvest of those oriented toward service to others? Ra, I am Ra. There is one harvest. Those able to enter fourth density through vibrational complex levels may choose the manner of their further seeking of the one creator. Questioner: Then as we enter the fourth density there will be a split, shall we say, and part of the individuals who go into the fourth density will go into planets or places where there is service to others and part will go into places where there is service to self. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner: Can you tell me the origin of the 10 Commandments? Ra, I am Ra. The origin of these commandments follows the law of negative entities impressing information upon positively oriented mind/body/spirit complexes. The information attempted to copy or ape positivity while retaining negative characteristics. Questioner: Was this done by the Orion group? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner: What was their purpose in doing this? Ra, I am Ra. The purpose of the Orion group, as mentioned before, is conquest and enslavement. This is done by finding and establishing an elite and causing others to serve the elite through various devices such as the laws you mentioned and others given by this entity. Questioner: Was the recipient of the commandments positively or negatively oriented? Ra, I am Ra. The recipient was one of extreme positivity, thus accounting for some of the pseudo-positive characteristics of the information received. As with contacts which are not successful, this entity, vibratory complex, Moish, did not remain a credible influence among those who had first heard the philosophy of one, and this entity was removed from this third density vibratory level in a lessened or saddened state, having lost, what you may call, the honor and faith with which he had begun the conceptualization of the law of one and the freeing of those who were of his tribes, as they were called at the time/space. Questioner: If this entity was positively oriented, how was the Orion group able to contact him? Ra, I am Ra. This was an intensive, shall we say, battleground between positively oriented forces of Confederation origin and negatively oriented sources. The one called Moish was open to impression and received the law of one in its most simple form. However, the information became negatively oriented due to his people's pressure to do specific physical things in the third density planes. This left the entity open for the type of information and philosophy of a self-service nature. Questioner: It would be wholly unlike an entity fully aware of the knowledge of the law of one to ever say thou shalt not. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner: Can you give me some kind of history of your social memory complex and how you became aware of the law of one? Ra, I am Ra. The path of our learning is graven in the present moment. There is no history, as we understand your concept. Picture, if you will, a circle of being. We know the Alpha and Omega as infinite intelligence. The circle never ceases. It is present. The densities we have traversed at various points in the circle correspond to the characteristics of cycles. First, the cycle of awareness; second, the cycle of growth; third, the cycle of self-awareness; fourth, the cycle of love or understanding; fifth, the cycle of light or wisdom; sixth, the cycle of light/love, love/light or unity; seventh, the gateway cycle; eighth, the octave which moves into a mystery we do not plumb. Questioner: Thank you very much. In previous material, before we communicated with you, it was stated by the Confederation that there is actually no past or future. That all is present. Would this be a good analogy? Ra, I am Ra. There is past, present, and future in third density. In an overview such as an entity may have, removed from the space/time continuum, it may be seen that in the cycle of completion there exists only the present. We, ourselves, seek to learn this understanding. At the seventh level or dimension, we shall, if our humble efforts are sufficient, become one with all, thus having no memory, no identity, no past or future, but existing in the all. Questioner: Does this mean that you would have awareness of all that is? Ra, I am Ra. This is partially correct. It is our understanding that it would not be our awareness, but simply awareness of the Creator. In the Creator is all that there is. Therefore, this knowledge would be available. Questioner: I was wondering how many inhabited planets there are in our galaxy and if they all reach higher density by the law of one. It doesn't seem that there would be any other way to reach higher density. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. Please restate your query. Questioner: How many inhabited planets are there in our galaxy? Ra, I am Ra. We are assuming that you intend all dimensions of consciousness or densities of awareness in this question. Approximately 1/5 of all planetary entities contain awareness of one or more densities. Some planets are hospitable only for certain densities. Your planet, for instance, is at this time hospitable for densities 1, 2, 3, and 4. Questioner: Roughly how many total planets in this galaxy of stars that we are in are aware regardless of density? Ra, I am Ra. Approximately 67 million. Questioner: Can you tell me what percentage of those are third, fourth, fifth, sixth etc. density? Ra, I am Ra. A percentage 17 for first density, a percentage 20 for second density, a percentage 27 for third density, a percentage 16 for fourth density, a percentage 6 for fifth density. The other information must be withheld. Questioner: Of these first 5 densities, have all of the planets progressed from the third density by knowledge and application of the law of one? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner: Then the only way for a planet to get out of the situation that we are in is for the population to become aware of and start practicing the law of one. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner: Can you tell me what percentage of the third, fourth, and fifth density planets which you have spoken of here are polarized negatively towards service to self? Ra, I am Ra. This is not a query to which we may speak given the law of confusion. We may say only that the negatively or self-service oriented planetary spheres are much fewer. To give you exact numbers would not be appropriate. Questioner: I would like to make an analogy as to why there are fewer negatively oriented, and then ask you if the analogy is good. In a positively oriented society with service to others, it would be simple to move a large boulder by getting everyone to help move it. In a society oriented towards service to self, it would be much more difficult to get everyone to work for the good of all to move the boulder. Therefore, It is much easier to get things done to create the service to others principle and to grow in positively oriented communities than in negatively oriented communities. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner: Thank you very much. Can you tell me how the Confederation of Planets was formed and why? Ra, I am Ra. The desire to serve begins, in the dimension of love or understanding, to be an overwhelming goal of the social memory complex. Thus, those percentiles of planetary entities, plus approximately 4% more of whose identity we cannot speak, found themselves long ago in your time seeking the same thing, service to others. The relationship between these entities as they entered an understanding of other beings, other planetary entities, and other concepts of service was to share and continue together these commonly held goals of service. Thus, each voluntarily placed the social memory complex data in what you may consider a central thought complex available to all. This then created a structure whereby each entity could work in its own service while calling upon any other understanding needed to enhance the service. This is the cause of the formation and the manner of the working of the Confederation. Questioner: With such a large number of planets in this galaxy, you say that there are approximately 500 planets in the Confederation. There seems to be a relatively small number of Confederation planets around. Is there a reason for it? Ra, I am Ra. There are many confederations. This confederation works with the planetary spheres of 7 of your galaxies, if you will, and is responsible for the callings of the densities of these galaxies. Questioner: Would you define the word galaxy as you just used it? Ra, I am Ra. We use that term in this sense as you would use star systems. Questioner: I'm a little bit confused as to how many total planets the confederation that you are in serves. Ra, I am Ra. I see the confusion. We have difficulty with your language. The galaxy term must be split. We call galaxy that vibrational complex that is local. Thus, your sun is what we would call the center of a galaxy. We see you have another meaning for this term. Questioner: Yes. In our science, the term galaxy refers to the lenticular star system that contains millions and millions of stars. There was a confusion about this in one of our earlier communications, and I'm glad to get it cleared up. Using the term galaxy in the sense that I just stated, using the lenticular star system that contains millions of stars, do you know of evolution in other galaxies besides this one? Ra, I am Ra. We are aware of life in infinite capacity. You are correct in this assumption. Questioner: Can you tell me if the progression of life in other galaxies is similar to the progression of life in our galaxy? Ra, I am Ra. The progression is somewhat close to the same, asymptotically approaching congruency throughout infinity. The free choosing of what you would call galactic systems causes variations of an extremely minor nature from one of your galaxies to another. Questioner: Then the law of one is truly universal in creating a progression towards the 8th density in all galaxies. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. There are infinite forms, infinite understandings, but the progression is one. Questioner: I am assuming that it is not necessary for an individual to understand the law of one to go from the 3rd to the 4th density. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. It is absolutely necessary that an entity consciously realize it does not understand in order for it to be harvestable. Understanding is not of this density. Questioner: That is a very important point. I used the wrong word. What I meant to say was that I believed that it was not necessary for an entity to be consciously aware of the law of one to go from the 3rd to the 4th density. Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner: At what point in the densities is it necessary for an entity to be consciously aware of the law of one in order to progress? Ra, I am Ra. The fifth density harvest is of those whose vibratory distortions consciously accept the honor/duty of the law of one. This responsibility/honor is the foundation of this vibration. Questioner: can you tell me a little more about this honor/responsibility concept? Ra: I am Ra. Each responsibility is an honor, each honor, a responsibility. Questioner: can you tell me of the silver flecks that we have found sometimes on our faces or elsewhere? Ra: I am Ra. These of which you speak are a materialization of a subjectively oriented signpost indicating to one mind/body/spirit complex, and no other, a meaning of subjective nature. Questioner: who creates these silver flecks? Ra: I am Ra. Picture, if you will, the increasing potential for learn/teaching. At some point a sign will be given indicating the appropriateness or importance of that learn/teaching. The entity itself, in cooperation with the inner planes, creates whatever signpost is most understandable or noticeable to it. Questioner: I understand that we ourselves create this. Ra: I am Ra. Entities consciously do not create these. The roots of mind complex, having touched in understanding, intelligent infinity, create them. Questioner: thank you. Is it possible for you to give a short description of the conditions in the fourth density? Ra: I am Ra. We ask you to consider as we speak that there are not words for positively describing fourth density. We can only explain what is not and approximate what is. Beyond fourth density our ability grows more limited until we become without words. That which fourth density is not, it is not of words, unless chosen. It is not of heavy chemical vehicles for body complex activities. It is not of disharmony within self. It is not of disharmony within peoples. It is not within limits of possibility to cause disharmony in any way. Approximations of positive statements: it is a plane of type of bipedal vehicle which is much denser and more full of life. It is a plane wherein one is aware of the thought of other selves. It is a plane wherein one is aware of vibrations of other selves. It is a plane of compassion and understanding of the sorrows of third density. It is a plane striving towards wisdom or light. It is a plane wherein individual differences are pronounced although automatically harmonized by group consensus. Questioner: could you define the word density as we have been using it? Ra: I am Ra. The term density is what you call, mathematical one. The closest analogy is that of music, whereby after 7 notes on your Western type of scale, if you will, the 8th note begins a new octave. Within your great octave of existence which we share with you, there are 7 octaves or densities. Within each density there are 7 sub-densities. Within each sub-density are 7 sub-sub-densities. Within each sub-sub-density, 7 sub-sub-sub-densities, and so on infinitely. Questioner: I noticed that the time of this session has gone slightly over an hour. I would like to ask at this time if we should go on. What is the condition of the instrument? Ra: I am Ra. This instrument is in balance. It is well to continue if you desire. Questioner: I understand that each density has 7 sub-densities which again have 7 sub-densities and so on. This is expanding at a really large rate as each is increased by powers of 7. Does this mean that in any density level anything that you can think of is happening? Ra: I am Ra. From your confusion we select the concept with which you struggle, that being infinity/opportunity. You may consider any possibility/probability complex as having an existence. Questioner: do things like daydreams become real in other densities? Ra: I am Ra. This depends upon the nature of the daydream. This is a large subject. Perhaps the simplest thing we can say is, if the daydream, as you call it, is one which attracts to self, this then becomes reality to self. If it is a contemplative general daydream, this may enter the infinity of possibility/probability complexes and occur elsewhere, having no particular attachment to the energy fields of the Creator. Questioner: to make this a little more clear, if I were to daydream strongly about building a ship, would this occur in one of these other densities? Ra, I am Ra. This would have or shall occur. Questioner: then if an entity daydreams strongly about battling an entity, would this occur? Ra, I am Ra. In this case the entity's fantasy concerns the self and other self, this binding the thought form to the possibility/probability complex connected with the self which is the creator of this thought form. This then would increase the possibility/probability of bringing this into third density occurrence. Questioner: does the Orion group use this principle to create conditions favorable to suit their purpose? Ra, I am Ra. We will answer more specifically than the question. The Orion group uses daydreams of hostile or other negative natures to feed back or strengthen these thought forms. Questioner: are there many wanderers who have and are coming to our planet subject to the Orion thoughts? Ra, I am Ra. As we have said before, wanderers become completely the creature of third density in mind/body complex. There is just as much chance of such influence to a wanderer entity as to a mind/body/spirit complex of this planetary sphere. The only difference occurs in the spirit complex which, if it wishes, has an armor of light, if you will, which enables it to recognize more clearly that which is not as it would appropriately be desired by the mind/body/spirit complex. This is not more than bias and cannot be called an understanding. Furthermore, the wanderer is, in its own mind/body/spirit, less distorted toward the, shall we say, deviousness of third density positive/negative confusions. Thus, it often does not recognize as easily as a more negative individual the negative nature of thoughts or beings. Questioner: then would the wanderers, as they incarnate here, be high priority targets of the Orion group? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner: if a wanderer should be successfully infringed upon, shall I say, by the Orion group, what would happen to this wanderer when harvest came? Ra, I am Ra. If the wanderer entity demonstrated through action a negative orientation towards other selves, it would be, as we have said before, caught into the planetary vibration and, when harvested, possibly repeat again the master cycle of third density as a planetary entity. This shall be the last full question of this session. Is there a short question we may answer before we close this session? Questioner: can the instrument be made more comfortable? Ra, I am Ra. This instrument is as comfortable as it is possible for you to make it given the weakness distortions of its body complex. You are conscientious. I am Ra. I leave you in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, then, rejoicing in the power and the peace. Adonai.